Hi there. Well, winter is well and truly here, and if you believe the fearmongers out there on social media and on YouTube and so on, it's the end of the world for EVs like the Škoda Enyaq. But is that true? No, it's not. So I was planning a trip down to Manchester a couple of weeks ago, and that's about a 4-hour drive from here, and I thought, I wonder if I can do something more than the usual rather than just showing where I charge, where I plug in, how much it costs, all that sort of thing. So I asked Škoda on the EV Lounge what sort of things customers might want to know about, and they came up with a list of questions. I then also put a poll on my channel asking viewers, what would you be worried about if you are a new EV owner, or you're about to buy one, or even if just thinking about one? So both groups came up with kind of similar list of questions, and I filmed quite a long, boring introduction, and it actually was really dull when I watched it back. So this is the short version. Don't be afraid, it's easy. I travelled from here to Manchester, and to be honest, I didn't really do any planning. I don't do any planning. I set off like I would in any car. I make sure the car's got a good charge before I go. I would with a tank of petrol or diesel, and I charge as and when I need to. And that is just simple these days. There used to be lots less infrastructure than there is now. Now, especially on that route, the M74, the M6, plenty chargers, and really it comes down to choice and preference and cost. So I tended to charge on this last trip I've just done where it was cheapest, and that really means these days Tesla superchargers, plenty of those, and it also meant where it was convenient for me. So unlike when you're in a petrol or a diesel car where you have to make a special trip to fill the car up, in this car I stop when I need to. Something that I need to do, whether it's eating or whether it's drinking coffee or it's actually going to the toilet, and then while I'm doing something else the car will refill itself. So it's less hassle. And as for the cold, yeah, it reduces your range. I'm going to share with you some tips in answer to the questions that Škoda gave me and things that you can do to help address that problem. But actually the reality is, in the winter time I prefer an EV. This car, I can go on the app, most EVs are the same, go on the app, or I can preset it on a regular schedule when I got my time to go to work, and the car will be, as it was today, 21 degrees when I get into it. My son has a Škoda Fabia, my wife has a Volkswagen Golf. Both of those cars were covered in ice this morning. This car was as you see it now, frost-free, warm, heating steering wheel, heated seats, everything was great. So actually in the winter time I think an EV is better. No more scraping. Yeah, there's some reduction in range, but that's true in a petrol car too. My son's Fabia normally does 54 miles to the gallon on average. Took it out yesterday when it was -1, I think, yesterday, and it was doing 30 miles to the gallon. So guess what? Fossil fuel cars suffer a range reduction as well. It's not an EV thing. It's just more noticeable in an EV, because when I got my first EV, the salesman said to me, it's really easy, you just need to get your head around the fact you're driving around with the equivalent of a quarter tank of petrol. Now that was a 40 kilowatt hour Nissan Leaf. This is a 77 kilowatt hour Škoda, and so it's probably more like just over half a tank of petrol in the car. But still, it's a different mindset. Anyway, enough of the waffling and introduction, on with the video. The trip from here in Livingston, just outside Edinburgh, down to Manchester, just about 4 hours. I think I did it in 3 hours 30. I had a colleague leaving from Glasgow in a diesel car, and he did exactly the same time. And guess what? He stopped for the toilet on the way as well. Anyway, on with the video. Okay, so I'm about to set off for Manchester. As you can see, it's quite dark. I've been faffing around with GoPros for about the last 20 minutes, trying to get everything working. The GoPro remote's decided to go on strike, so I'm a little bit later than I should have been. However, it means it's a little bit lighter in terms of filming, although it doesn't look it. So got a journey this morning. It's 212 miles, 3 hours 44. The car, for some reason, I think I didn't set the right timing on Octopus, so it only charged to 90% this morning. So it has done a little bit running around this morning, dropping my son at the school bus. So we're now at 89%. The gasometer saying 207 miles. Earlier on this morning, it said 237. But what I've been doing is a little bit of local short trips, heating the car up, cooling the car down, or the car's cooled down, then heating it up again. So that's killed the efficiency a little bit. So I'm hoping that'll pick up once we get on the road. So I'm going to use the Škoda sat-nav system this morning. And the lesson learned, always trust your sat-nav. I went to do my little local shortcut onto the road I take across to the motorway, and the sat-nav was telling me to go another way, and I thought, stupid sat-nav, I know better than you. And when I got to the end of the lane that I take across to the next main road, there was a road closed sign. So lesson learned, trust your Škoda sat-nav. Okay, things are a little brighter now. It's now 20 to 9 in the morning. It's minus 4 degrees. So, as I said in the intro to this video, winter is here. So what can you do about range in the winter time? It's a thing that gets called out. EVs are no good in the winter. EVs are terrible and your range just dies. Well, actually, I'd say the opposite. EVs, for me, are at their best in the winter. Not in terms of range, but then again, I can't go as far as the car can go. I will, as a driver, have to stop before the car needs to stop. So, is the range really a massive issue? No, not particularly. The best thing about the EV in the wintertime is what happened this morning. So it was frosty, the neighbours were all out scraping cars, but actually my car was defrosted. It was 20 degrees inside the car, it was warm and toasty, everything was defrosted, and that for me is the top feature of not just this car, but all EVs, because all EVs pretty much can do that. I don't think I've heard of anyone that can't precondition. So, what else can you do about the range? Well, actually, on the Enyaq, I don't know about all, in fact, I know all EVs don't do this. My old Nissan Leaf certainly didn't do it, and I don't think my Tesla did, but I'm not sure on that one. But when I set the car to pre-warm, if the temperature is in the right range, and I'll put an image overlaid on the screen alongside this that shows the range of scenarios and temperatures in which the car will heat it up, because it's quite complicated, quite clever little matrix. My car preheated the battery this morning. Now the advantage of that in terms of range is twofold. One, the warm battery is going to release energy more efficiently than a cold battery. You often see people on social media saying, I plugged the car in last night and it had 20 miles left, or I parked the car up last night, I had 20 miles left, this morning it's only got 5, where's my range gone? It's not gone anywhere, it's just that a cold battery will not be able to release the energy in the same way that a warm one will. So my car has warmed the battery up, and looking at Car Scanner on my phone, it showed that the battery was at 8 degrees, even though it's minus 4 outside. So it's clearly warmed that battery up by 12 degrees. So really, don't stress about the range figure that's shown on your dashboard. It's not an absolute number, it does vary according to the conditions. So obviously this morning it's minus 4, I've been large patches of standing water which have really killed speed. I've then had to spend more energy getting going again. So all that combines to reduce the range that's predicted by the car. So this morning when I got in, the car was 20 degrees and it was basing the prediction on 4.1 miles per kilowatt hour that I did yesterday, and so it said I was going to have something like 237 miles. Now that it's realised it's minus 4 and I've been driving fairly inefficiently, then it has reduced that prediction now with 74% left to 156. I've travelled 33, so that's just over 190 miles. So you can see it's scrubbed off about 40 miles there. Does that matter? Not really, because I am going to stop. So it's honestly not an issue. I mention this in these videos because I mention range, because that's the sort of thing that people worry about before they've got an EV. But my message really would be, yeah, the range is not going to be the same as when you had a petrol car, and the car could drive for 500 miles without stopping. The reality is, nobody ever drives 500 miles without stopping. So don't worry about it, it's an unrealistic scenario. So, going through the questions that people have asked on the channel. Somebody asked about D mode and B mode on the Enyaq. Which is more efficient? Well, really, you can drive either mode and probably achieve the same efficiency. It's all about driving style and driving convenience. So B mode will, as soon as you lift the foot off the accelerator pedal, will engage maximum level of regen. Now, people when they first get an EV, or maybe before they buy an EV, think, well, that's fantastic, I'll just put all the energy I've used back into the battery. No, you won't. No energy recuperation system is 100% efficient. So you will only receive a proportion of the energy you've spent back via regen. So if I accelerate and then in B mode and then lift my foot off the pedal, I will have used power. I will not get all that power back. Look at a proportion. I can't remember the percentage. I think from memory it's about 60%, but I'll overlay on here if I can find it on the internet what the actual figure is, but it's not 100%. So D mode, what that allows you to do is to coast. So the Eco Assist system on the Enyaq has got a little symbol will come up on the dashboard. It's like a foot lifting off of an accelerator pedal and a little cartoon graphic there. And what that tells you is lift your foot off the accelerator pedal. So the car knows what the road layout is ahead. It can see in its radar and from its GPS positioning and the navigation database, it knows what the road layout is. So it can detect junctions, things like roundabouts, traffic lights and so on, and it will know that it's time to slow down, and it will know that with the current speed that it has, the momentum will carry it to that obstacle without you then having to brake or having to do minimal braking. So it's actually quite a smart system, and if you follow that, then you will actually get probably the most efficient drive you can. The difference between that and B mode is that in B mode you have to feather the throttle. In D mode, if I'm on, as I have been this morning, on country roads, I know when I'm going to be hitting a downhill section, I just take my foot off the pedal, and I know that the momentum will carry me through that, and if the speed starts to drop, I'll apply some more power. So it's a different style of driving, but both will be potentially as efficient. I find though that in B mode, I'm not as smart as the car is at knowing exactly when to lift my foot off the throttle. So I find I get slightly lower efficiency, but it's really a matter of preference. So next question, climate control and how does that impact on range? Well, like I said in the preheating comments I made earlier, really it's down to how much heat you're putting into the cabin. Now if you have an Enyaq with a heat pump, that will be more efficient than just using the straightforward PTC heater, the resistive heater that I've got in this car. My old car had a heat pump and it was definitely more efficient in the winter time. But whether you've got a heat pump or not, the heating system will have a massive impact. So at the moment I've got a range prediction of 151 miles. If I actually turn off my heating system altogether, it jumps up to 159. So I've got 8 miles of difference just by having heating on or not. Now I've got the heating set at 18 degrees, that's what I find, and the Enyaq is quite comfortable. And I've got the fan set to 1, so I find if I take it off of the automatic settings and put it onto manual, then I get the best efficiency and comfort. It's -4 outside. I am not going to travel without any heating. I don't even have the heated seats on, and I don't have the heated steering wheel on, because when I pre-warmed the car, it's taken really all the cold, if you like, or it's warmed up the seats and the steering wheel. But if I hadn't pre-warmed the cabin, I would be using those. So that's it on manual. If I set it to automatic and 20 degrees, actually it's knocked 2 miles off of the range prediction. So for me it's more about comfort. I do what's comfortable for me in the car, and I set it to a comfortable temperature. For me that's about 18, 19 degrees. Any more than that, I find sometimes the Enyaq actually tends to kind of overheat, or I tend to overheat. I find it's pushing out, it feels like it's warmer than the temperature I've set. So I find that on this car, setting it to about between 18 and 20 degrees is about right, and that's kind of where I leave it. Okay, so next question, eco versus standard versus performance, I guess, but the questioner only asked about eco versus standard. to be honest, these are really shortcuts. I mean, you can drive in standard mode or even in sport mode if you wanted. You could drive it economically. What the eco mode does is it basically it dulls the car down a little bit, probably. So it claims to temper what the climate control system's doing, and it certainly does dampen the throttle down so you don't get your full maximum power. I pretty much leave it in standard, not least because the car forgets every time you switch off and on again. It forgets what mode you were in, so I just don't really bother. It's really about how you as a driver drive. Now, if you find that you're new to the world of EV motoring and you're really taken by all the acceleration, yeah, go in sport mode. If you find that that's trashing your economy, moderate your right foot. If you can't be trusted to moderate your right foot, or you can't resist the temptation, then stick it into eco mode and it will moderate it for you. But really, it's a convenience. So again, a bit like B mode and D mode, it's a different way of driving, driver preference. I tend not to do much with it at all. But as I say, if it's a way of controlling your urge to use all the power, then fine, use your eco mode if you wish. So someone asked a question about reliability, concerned that battery electric cars might not be as reliable as fossil fuel cars with more working parts. I think actually this question has got things around the wrong way. Battery electric cars have fewer working parts or moving parts. So obviously it's got wheels and brakes, suspension, seat belts, all the usual things that any car has got, so those are no different. The thing that's different is the propulsion. So you've got no transmission to worry about, you've got no oil changes, you have got hundreds fewer parts, I think I'm right in saying, I don't know, but an electric motor has basically got a fraction of the moving parts that a fossil engine has. So in terms of reliability, it actually should be much, much more reliable. I've been pretty fortunate. This is my second Enyaq. I have had virtually no problems. Every Enyaq owner, certainly the early Enyaq owners, would tell you about the puddle lights. The pattern on the lenses underneath the wing mirrors tends to melt and distort after about a year, and you need to get them replaced under warranty. I had that done twice on my first Enyaq, and supposedly Škoda have now changed the part, and this car, fingers crossed, should not have that problem. If it does happen, to be honest, it's not really a massive issue. I got it replaced under warranty because the car was in having a software update, so that wasn't really something I would have bothered making a special trip for. Other things, I had a drop link broken on the suspension on my last car, and I put that down to the frankly really shocking roads that I travel round about my Škoda dealer. I work really close to the main Edinburgh dealer, and the roads around there at the back of their garage are particularly ridden with potholes and trenches and all sorts. It's really shocking. So whether that's a common thing or not, I don't know. But reliability, look, the battery has got an 8-year warranty. Most cars, other than the Korean ones, tend to have 3-year warranties. So you work it out. What are the manufacturers confident in? Are they more confident in the normal conventional car parts, or are they confident in the battery? I think the 8-year warranty, which is very much standard, says it all. So I don't think there's an issue with reliability there whatsoever. So here's a good question. Someone asked, what would a work week with the Enyaq look like if I did not have home charging? Well, it'd be more expensive, because obviously at home I plug in and I get 7 pence. I tend to do that try to do that every day so that I can get off-peak power at my house. The car certainly doesn't need to be charged every day. It probably needs to be charged about every week, maybe every week and a half. And I've got chargers that are about, well, the closest ones are about 300 metres from my office. So I would probably just plug in there and then go back at lunchtime and pick the car up and drive it off. I think there's a time limit on those of about 4 hours, so that would kind of work. They are 40 pence per kilowatt hour, so much more expensive than the 7 pence, but not the most expensive chargers like you find on motorways. Same as petrol and diesel really in that respect. If you charge on a motorway, you're paying for the convenience and the facility, and it costs you more. So electricity is not that different in that respect. But yeah, a week without home charging would be pretty much easy for me. Maybe I would get slightly more walking done, not much. 600 metres isn't going to make a difference to my health that much, but it would make a difference to my wallet. Okay, here's a good question. Somebody worrying about, does the car light up the brake lights when you are using regen rather than brakes? Yes, it does. I can't show you footage of that. I will maybe try and find some and I can overlay it later on. But yeah, the car does light up the brake lights when you're using regen. In actual fact, when you press the brake pedal, the first thing the car does is apply regen, and then it will bleed in or blend in the brakes afterwards. So yeah, whenever you're pressing your brake pedal, to start with, you're not actually using the brakes anyway. It will always use regen first and then blend that in with the braking, the friction braking. But yeah, good question. Now another question here, this is the last of the viewer questions. How do you enable the heat pump? Well, you don't. If the car has a heat pump, that's how it heats your car. And I think it actually helps with cooling your car as well. So the moment you use your climate control, you have enabled your heat pump. If you don't have a heat pump, well, the car uses a PTC heater instead. So there's no way for the user to enable the heat pump. It just does its thing. I'm not sure if this questioner was meaning, how do you pre-warm the car? And if so, I covered that slightly earlier on. You either do it via the app or you do it via the controls on the dash. So that's the end of the viewers' questions. Now I'm going to go on and try and cover off what Škoda asked about. Okay, so as I said in the introduction, I reached out to the guys who run the Škoda EV Lounge and said, what sort of questions do you find people ask, and what should I cover in this video that would be helpful? So here we go. So question number one on the Škoda list: how and when do you plan your long trips? Well, this morning I haven't planned this long trip at all. All I've done is I've got in the car, I've entered the destination on the sat nav, and I've headed off. I did actually look at it beforehand on a better route planner on my computer, not because I wanted to know how to get there, although I do want to know how to get there because I don't know the Manchester area. What I did that for was because one of my colleagues had asked what time I was going to arrive. Would I be there in time for lunch? Would I be there, or when should we book the meeting room for? So I did it on there to work out and tell them what time I was going to get there. So actually, there's a multitude of ways of planning it. Like I'm showing this morning, you can just use the car sat nav. I could use Google Maps on Android Auto. There's Google Maps. Or I could use ZapMap is another one that does planning. I could use WhatsApp, which is another one I use on the phone. Or there's, I think, the Octoplus app from Octopus, my energy provider. That too has a route planning function. So there's a multitude of ways of doing it. I tend to like, if I'm going to be doing it in the car, then I tend to put on a better route planner. So I use a better route planner mainly out of habit, to be honest. It's great because it shows me the car state of charge on the screen, it shows me availability of chargers, it does all that sort of thing, and that's fantastic. And there's lots and lots of configuration options in it as well. So if you want to say, I want to arrive with a certain state of charge, either low or high, because you're either wanting to get low state of charge to get a really fast charge, or you want to have a higher state of charge just to give you reassurance, you can do all that, and the program will work everything out for you. So it's a really, really good option. Lots of EV drivers swear by that, but to be honest, you really don't need to. If you want to just get in the car and drive, you can do that. So question number two from Škoda: how do you choose your preferred chargers? Now I bet Škoda want me to say I always use Škoda Powerpass. I don't. I did use it when I first got my first Enyaq because it was a really good free offer of discounted charging that came with new cars. It doesn't happen anymore, and actually Škoda Powerpass is useful for accessing Ionity chargers, but Ionity now offer their own plan direct, so you can get a lower subscription price and a lower energy price as well. So I don't understand why they're doing that, because Ionity are part of, or Volkswagen Group are part of the Ionity setup, so I'm not sure why they're competing with themselves in effect, but there we are. So how do I choose them? Well, it's a mixture of convenience and price. Same as anything else when you're fueling up any other car. You want to go somewhere that you don't have to go massively out your way, and you want to look for the best price. So my son and wife have both got fossil cars. We tend to go to Costco and fill those up because we know it's cheaper there. It's about 10 pence a litre cheaper, so we do that. We mix it in with a trip to Costco to buy some shopping, but that's what you do. This is no different. So it's the same thing with the electric car. I'm going to go on this trip to Manchester this morning. I'm going to have to stop, I reckon, round about Carlisle. I happen to know that there's a Costa Coffee there, and it's got Tesla superchargers, and I know that Tesla superchargers will be the cheapest along this route. So that's where I'm going to go. It's not rocket science. What I will do is I will look on one of the apps or on the car screen so I can see before I get there whether there are any chargers free. Now at that location there are 12, I think, Tesla superchargers, and I'm pretty sure it's 12 grid serve chargers. So I think there's about 24, in fact there's an older medium power grid serve charger there too, so I think I've got about 25 different chargers that I can choose from. The most I've ever seen there is 2 other cars, so I don't really have to worry about it. Now, next question, good one. How do I prepare the car? Do I charge it to 80% or 100%? Normally, I keep the car at 80%. It's best for the health of the car, because if you leave a battery sitting at 100%, it actually stresses the battery. The chemistry then degrades and you shorten the lifespan of your battery. Why would I want to do that? I don't. That's why the manufacturers usually provide a battery care mode and a warning. In the Škoda's case, that's 80%. My last video I had a Polestar 2 and it said 90%. So, you know, they all do some sort of form of recommendation. But there's nothing wrong on a long trip charging to 100%. So that is what I would normally do. As I say, last night I went to bed without thinking and didn't change the limit on Octopus. And so Octopus didn't add the full 100% to my car last night, so the car was at 90% when I got up this morning. It's not any massive issue whatsoever. But yeah, for a normal trip I would normally charge the car to 100% if I hadn't been forgetful, and for normal daily driving around the place I charge to 80% because that's best for the long-term health of the car. So the next question from Škoda: how do you spend your free time when charging? I don't really have any free time when charging. It might have been more of an issue on my first generation Enyaq when especially in winter when I didn't have battery preconditioning. That might have taken longer, but in reality I tend to do charging sessions either when I sleep or when I'm at work or at the shops or at the gym, something like that, using a destination charger, and then I'll be doing whatever it is I need to be doing. Or if I'm on a long trip like this, then I would probably stop and go to the bathroom, maybe grab some coffee, or if it's lunchtime or evening meal time, I would go and grab some food. But I don't certainly sit around in the car waiting for it to charge. I used to do that when I had a Nissan Leaf. Now the Nissan Leaf maximum charging speed was 50 kilowatts. I never ever saw 50 kilowatts. I think the fastest I thought was 46, and even then it would tail off pretty quickly. It would get to, I think, about, from memory, 30%, and then it would start tapering that charge right down. So yeah, there were times when you had to sit around in the car. So what I have for that, and I've had for many years, is an Android Auto box, and I can sit and watch Netflix or Disney Plus, play a game, something like that. It basically puts TV onto the large screen in the car, so that's quite a useful thing to have. But I use it not as often as I used to when I had a Nissan Leaf, put it that way. So another question from Škoda's list. I've kind of answered this already without realising I was going to be asked this question. After what time driving do I plan to stop? And why? Is it to do with driving conditions or so on? Well, I've kind of alluded to this already. I usually stop after a couple of hours. Certainly in the UK, the highway code recommends a break every 2 hours, just a short break, and I pretty much do that. Gone are the days when I had a diesel Škoda Octavia and I would try and drive for hours and hours and hours, and I would actually end up arriving quite tired because it's exhausting. So what I do nowadays is I stop after roughly 2 hours, maybe slightly more, and it's usually down to the fact that I'm bored or tired, and maybe just losing a little bit of concentration and attention. And the other thing is, maybe this is to do with advancing age, I need to go to the bathroom. So I tend to be drinking coffee at my flask, and then I will need to go and empty out that coffee when I get somewhere after a couple of hours. So that's roughly what I do. On my recent trip I did from the Birmingham area back up to Livingston, I actually stopped 3 times. The car needed to stop no times. I could have made that entire journey without a charging stop, but I got stuck in traffic. If you've watched that video, I got stuck in traffic for ages round about the Preston area, and after I sat and guzzled coffee while I was bored waiting in traffic jams, I found I needed the bathroom, so I stopped there. Then I was getting hungry round about 6:30 at night, and so I stopped for my evening meal and I went to T-Bay. I actually plugged the car in there for 10 minutes, and then, having consumed I think a quarter of a litre of water with my meal, I then found after about another hour I needed the bathroom again. So that's typically what I do, is if I'm passing a service area and I reckon I'm in need of a break, I'll take a break. But does the car dictate it? No, not anymore. In the Enyaq 60, yes, there was more of that, but in this 85 edition, no, the car doesn't dictate the charging, or doesn't dictate the stops at all. There is a rule. There's the famous YouTuber Tesla Bjorn. It's a great channel. He reviews all sorts of electric vehicles and does insane 1,000 kilometre challenges. His mantra is ABC, always be charging. So unless it's prohibitively expensive, and it can be in a lot of public chargers, then ABC is not a bad rule to apply. And that's what I did on that last trip back up this road. I stopped at T-Bay, plugged it in for 10 minutes just to give me a little extra comfort margin to make sure I would arrive on time. But otherwise, yeah, the car doesn't dictate charging or stops whatsoever. So the last question from Škoda: are you using Powerpass? Yes or no, and why? No. I used to use it when I got my first Enyaq. You got a year of discounted charging for free, and I did that. After that, it was a subscription you had to take out, and it was a year at a time, so I never did that. And then they changed it to monthly subscription. Perfect if you're maybe going on holiday, making a trip like this, 1 or 2 charges and you've covered your subscription charge. And I did that a couple of times and then terminated it because I didn't need it day in, day out, just for normal family commuting and so on. But then what happened, I think last year, was Ionity undercut Škoda Powerpass, and I think the Ionity subscription is now maybe a couple of pounds cheaper than Škoda. A couple of pounds matters, and the rate per kilowatt hour is also cheaper as well. So why would I use Škoda Powerpass? Škoda does give me access to discounts on a wider range of chargers as well, but they're not chargers I would use. I think from memory it gives you discounts on BP Pulse or RL Pulse in mainland Europe, and it gives me a discount on Shell. I don't use either of those networks, so it's got actually no advantage to me whatsoever. One thing it does allow is plug and charge, so you can just plug in the car, it will start charging, so that's really convenient. But I've also got that with my Octopus card from Octopus Energy, so again I can get that convenience. You can't have both running, you have to elect for one or the other, and you do that via the My Škoda app. So no, I don't use it, I'm afraid. I wish I did. I wish that they had some more attractive tariffs, but they don't. And we did ask Klaus Zelmer, CEO of Škoda Auto, we asked Klaus about this when we were in Mlada Boleslav, and he said that unfortunately Škoda their hands are tied by the agreements they've got with their partners in the Škoda Powerpass arrangement. I don't know who those are. It may be one of those charging companies. I just don't know. Anyway, that's the answer. Škoda Lounge, EV Lounge. I don't use Powerpass anymore. Maybe one day if the offers get better. But for right now, no.